אפשר להשם צדיקים יבואו גבול.
Every Thursday, I teach a Torah class for Ukrainian Jews, those who are in Ukraine and those who had to leave the country and temporarily reside elsewhere in the world. And this week's portion was particularly challenging for us. In the Parsha Matot, we continue learning about the military conquests of Israelites. And for many of us, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, these portions of the Torah received new meaning. They became very personal. It is one thing to read about ancient past conflicts, and it's entirely different when you are a part of such conflict. And this is what it said in the Torah. The Israelites took the women and children of Midianites captive and seized as loot all their beasts, all their herds, and all their wealth. And they destroyed by fire all the towns in which they were settled and their encampments. They gathered all the spoil and all the loot, human and beast, and they brought it to Moshe. And Moshe became angry with the commanders of the army and said to them, "You have spared every female, yet they are the ones who, by the instruction of Balaam, induced the Israelites to trespass against God in the matter of Peor, so that God's community was struck by the plague. Now, therefore, slay every male among the children, and also slay every woman who has known a man carnally." It is heartbreaking to read in our Holy Torah how Israelites wage wars against other nations. Today, we don't need to rely on our imagination to see burning cities, death and destruction. Like never before in the history of humanity, we can see it in color through videos and photographs. We can basically watch the war online as a live stream. So when we read how Israelites destroyed by fire all the towns of Midianites and slew every male, the visions of it are real. And how could Moshe, the most humble person in the whole Torah, get angry because Israelites showed mercy to women and children? How could he order to kill them? And how could he order to kill the women of Midian when his own wife, Zipporah, was a Midianite? Her father, Yitro, the priest of Midian, gave Moshe shelter when he flew from Egypt. He was his teacher and a friend, and Midianite tribe was his family. So how could Moshe be so cruel, contradicting the laws of mercy and even the laws of warfare? How can we love Torah when it says something so shocking that simply cannot be accepted? Anytime we encounter a moral challenge in the Torah, we must decide how to deal with it. And several approaches may be taken. One is to say that this is not a real story. This is a legend, and some details of this legend are grossly exaggerated. For example, it is said that Israelites brought back from the war campaign 575,000 sheep, 722,000 cows, 610,000 donkeys, and 32,000 captive young women who did not have carnal relationships with men. This does not look like real numbers. And also the archaeological excavations don't show evidence of the massive destructions of the cities in this geographical region in the corresponding historical period. And more than that, the Torah itself does not confirm that Midianites were exterminated completely. Later in the book of Judges, it is said that not only the Midianites did not perish, but they also ruled over Israel. Then the Israelites did what was offensive to the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hands of Midianites for 7 years. The hand of the Midianites prevailed over Israel, and because of Midian, the Israelites provided themselves with refuges in the caves and strongholds of the mountains. This is Judges chapter 6, verses 1-2. From this, we may conclude that this is just a legend that described a vengeful dream of Israelites who wanted to kill all Midianites but never did. However, this approach has some significant limitations. Ultimately, we can say that everything in the Torah is a legend, and then nothing will have a real value for us. But Torah is holy to us. It is our tree of life that we hold on to. It is the base of our faith and culture. Only because we have Torah, we still exist as a nation 2,000 years after the destruction of the temple. We can't just write off Torah as old fairy tales. And another problem is that even if we say that this story never happened, it doesn't explain why it is still preserved in the Torah. It must have had a certain value or came to teach us a lesson. And what lesson can we learn from it? That Moshe was right in his anger and that Midianite women and children deserve to be killed? The mind cannot accept that. Fortunately for us, there is always another approach. In most cases, when we have a problem in the text, our sages of blessed memory have already thought about it. They too are bothered by the unexpected cruelty of Moshe. In the Midrashic collection of Sifrei Bemidbar, approximately 3rd century of Common Era, Rabbi Elazar says, in 3 places, Moshe succumbed to anger and he succumbed to error. In the book of Vayikra, it is said he was wroth with Elazar and Ithamar, the remaining sons of Aaron, saying, why did you not eat the sin offering in the holy place? Second time in Bemidbar, and he said to them, listen now, you fractious ones, shall we bring forth water from you from this rock? And Moshe lifted his hand and smote the rock with his staff twice. And third time is here in Bemidbar. And Moshe was wroth with the commanders of the host, and he said, now therefore slay every male among the children, and also slay every woman. Our sages say that this was not a commandment of God, to kill women and children, but the error of Moshe. 3 times Moshe succumbed to anger, and he was punished for that. He did not enter the land of Israel and died on the other side of Jordan. And soon after this expression of uncontrolled anger, few verses down in our Parsha, this is chapter 31, verse 21, we read, and Elazar, the Kohen, said to the men of the host who came to the war, this is the law of the Torah which the Lord commanded Moshe. Why suddenly is Elazar delivering the laws to people, saying that this is what God commanded to Moshe? Moshe is still there, he is around. Why Elazar talking instead of him? Our sages say that this is because of the mistake of Moshe. He loses his leadership because he could not control his anger. The Midrash says Moshe was so angry that he forgot the law, and Elazar had to step up and take the leadership role. Because Moshe had succumbed to anger, he succumbed to forgetfulness. Sages clearly label the behavior of Moshe as a mistake, and they do not try to justify it. And this approach shows us just how rich the text of the Torah is. Instead of discarding the story entirely, we can see its hidden layers, its drama, and its complexity that are not so apparent at the first glance. This is a traditional approach of our sages, midrash, a way to uncover the meaning of the text. And this, I believe, is the most fruitful combination of these approaches to morally problematic text: an intellectual, honest recognition that there is a problem, a critical historical overview of the context of the story combined with the traditional interpretation that came to us from our ancestors. This yields the most fruitful results: the discovery of new interpretations, sincere interest in the text, and most importantly, at least in my opinion, our intellectual development and the intellectual development of the next generations. Though it was very difficult and painful for us to read about the wars that Israelites waged against other nations, this challenge led to a profound discussion, and instead of losing connection to the Torah. It brought us closer to it and to each other. And I would like to end with a quote that one of my Ukrainian students shared while we were studying this parsha. It is a quote from the book of Yehoshua ben Nun. "Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." And let us say, Amen.